All right, folks. So yesterday I talked about how, in my opinion, there's only three states that matter in this presidential election: Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Like I said, if the Republicans can take Pennsylvania, they've got the thing in their bag. And if the Democrats lose Wisconsin and Michigan, they will lose regardless of any other states that they win of those five contested states. The other two being Nevada and Arizona, which I don't feel are very important in particular, because I think that Wisconsin and Michigan will break the same direction, whichever direction that is. And today we're going to talk about what the polls look like. There aren't a lot of polls that have Kamala Harris and Donald Trump head to head, but there are some, and we're going to look at each state and see where they stand right now. Now, most of these polls, if not all of them, were done prior to Harris being the presumptive nominee. So at the time these polls were done, it was sort of, hey, if Biden were to drop out and the race was between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, who would you pick? And so it was more theoretical at the time that they were done. The polls may change for her once she becomes the actual nominee. These polls were done while Joe Biden was still the nominee for the most part. But let's look at how she fared, because there are, in each of these states, there are polls that put Kamala Harris and Donald Trump head to head to see who people would vote for. So let's take a look at that. We're going to start with Michigan, and we're going to look at what the polls are. I like the site 538.com. They're a poll aggregator, so they don't actually do any polls. They just gather all the polls that are done and they aggregate them. And then they do sort of what the average is looking like over time. It's like a rolling average. So let's look at the presidential election in Michigan in 2024. And you will see that right now, Trump was up 43 to 41. But if we look through here, we'll see that there are some polls for Harris. So Harris-Trump, she gets 41%. Trump gets 46%. Let's see if we have, there's another one down here. We have 46 and 46, so they're tied up. Now, what's interesting here is these two pollsters that ran these polls are partisan supporters of the Democratic Party. So these are people who have a vested interest in making the Democratic Party look good in their polling. So these polls could be a little biased towards Democrats. And they have Harris losing by 5 points and then tied with Trump. And then last poll here, we have, again, the Progressive Action Fund, another Democratic Party-aligned pollster. And you have Harris losing by 2 points to Donald Trump. So Michigan, the landscape is an uphill climb for Harris. Trump is ahead in almost all these polls. We do have the one tied poll there, and two where he is ahead by 2 points and then 5 points. 5 points is a pretty good leap there. So that's Michigan. So right from the get-go, it's an uphill climb for Harris in Michigan. The public, the general public, and again, you're not talking about everybody in Michigan. You have diehard Trumpists in Michigan and diehard, Bidenists or Kamalists now that will never vote red and will never vote blue, right? What we're looking at is a thin slice of maybe between 5 to 10% of voters that are independents or otherwise sort of unaligned, and what you have to do is convince them that you're the better choice. You're fighting over this little tiny slice of the pie. You're not really fighting over the diehard, dyed-in-the-wool type of supporters here. And that little margin in Michigan, at the time these polls were done, which these are July polls, so these are not old polls, these are July polls, they're leaning heavily towards Trump. So that is an area that should be a lot of focus for the Harris campaign. All right, so let's look at Wisconsin and see if we have any polls there. Again, you saw that Biden was losing pretty handily to Trump at the time that he stepped down or stepped out of this race. But there are a couple of polls, again, done by these Democratic-aligned pollsters. Here we have Harris and Trump head-to-head, 48-48. So that first one, a little bit better for her in Wisconsin. And then we have one other poll where she's down 48-49. So she's losing just by 1 point. And those are the only two polls we have here. Both of those, again, July polls. But not looking good. That's not where you want to start. She's at best even, at worst losing, right? In Michigan and Wisconsin. Now remember what I said yesterday. If the Democrats lose both of those states, they lose the election. They cannot win without Michigan and Wisconsin. They have to have those two states. And then finally, let's look at Pennsylvania. Because that's another one that the Democrats have to win. They cannot lose Pennsylvania. Now, they could lose one or the other of Wisconsin and Michigan. I just lump those together because I think, in my opinion, Robert Porter's opinion, that those two states will go the same direction. They might split them. She might win Michigan and lose Wisconsin, in which case they'd have to then pick up Arizona and Nevada in order to still win. But it's my strongly held opinion that Michigan and Wisconsin will break the same direction. Whichever direction that is, they're going to break the same direction. And right now, it's looking like both of those are going to break towards Trump. That is where they are headed. That's the trajectory, right? He's been gaining ground over time. The Democrats have been losing ground over time. And so Harris is coming into this now, and she needs to make up not just a gap, but momentum going in the opposite direction. Okay, so Pennsylvania. Again, Trump was handily, I mean, this is the widest margin we've seen so far. He was far ahead of Biden and growing, right? So the trajectory, again, is away from the Democrat. And that's something that Harris is going to have to make up. So again, we have a poll here, Harris-Trump, down 4 points. That's almost as bad as that one that we saw in Wisconsin. Here, another one, Harris v. Trump, down 2 points. And here, another one, Harris v. Trump, down 7 points. Another one here, down 2 points. And a couple more, down 6 points, down 1 point, down 2 points, down 1 point, down 2 points. That is ugly. That is an ugly situation to step into because they could win all the other states. They could win Arizona. They could win Nevada, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And if they lose, and it doesn't matter if they lose by 1 point or 7 points, if they lose Pennsylvania and those electoral college votes go to Trump, they will lose the election. There is no path to victory for the Democrats without Pennsylvania. And they are polling badly. I mean, this last poll where she's down 4 points was done on the 21st. That poll was 2 days ago. And she's losing by 4 points. That's a lot of ground to make up. That's a lot of ground to make up. And it does not look particularly good for Harris in any of these 3 states that are pivotal. They are so important. You have to win these. Now, Pennsylvania in particular is a must-win. But Wisconsin and Michigan, they have to win at least one of those. They can't lose both of them or they lose. And in my opinion, if they lose one of them, they are going to lose both of them. But they could potentially win one and pick up Arizona and Nevada and still win. I think that's an unlikely scenario. But that gives you an idea of where this campaign is going. A lot of Democrats right now are sort of glad-handing each other and cheering and saying, oh, Harris is going to knock this out of the park. She's got all this momentum. Everything's good. Now, she is going to experience a bump almost certainly. And you've seen this incredible fundraising action. But that fundraising is a nationwide fundraising, right? And it doesn't matter that a whole bunch of Utah Democrats gave her $10. It doesn't matter that 44,000 people on a Zoom call put together a whole bunch of money and broke a bunch of fundraising records. That's good. It's certainly not a bad thing for her. That's a great thing for her. It's good to have people excited. It's good to have people energized. But are people in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania energized and excited? Are those not diehards, right? Because all these people fundraising incredible amounts of money, those are dyed-in-the-wool people. Those are people that likely would have held their nose and voted for Biden anyway. They're thrilled to not have to vote for Biden. They're thrilled to have another option. But that doesn't mean that's going to translate to those 5% of people who are undecided going for Kamala Harris. Because as I've mentioned before, Kamala Harris is a deeply flawed candidate. She's a poor communicator. She is fairly unlikable as a candidate. She is not a strong debater or a strong speaker. She does not do well in interviews. She does not do well when put on the spot or given even sort of softball hard questions. She crumbles. She has a very hard time expressing an opinion on something because she's always trying to hedge her bets. And she has to turn around a massive amount of momentum going away from her and towards Trump. If the election were today, I would probably bet on Trump. If the election were right now, she has to make up some ground. It does not look particularly good for her, despite all of the sort of jubilation that's happening among Democrats right now, and the sort of fear that I'm starting to see on the Republican side. As far as I can tell, things are not great for Harris. She is starting at a serious deficit and has a very steep hill to climb in order to make this even a competitive race.